This is the 7th day of the March 90 7-day retreat in Springwater. As we usually do, we will read from selections from Wang Po's, from the Zen teaching of Wang Po, translated by John Blofeld. And then we will read an interview with Krishnamurti done by the East-West Journal in 1983, and then 3 selections from the early 60s published in Krishnamurti's notebook. Since there is copyrighted material being used, this will be taped, but the tape will not be for sale. Maybe some people here have never heard any of these selections. Few people may have heard some of them. And maybe some people have heard all of them many times. The reason, or one of the reasons that we do these readings is that people like them. They find them very helpful, have told me so in the past. And the question is always, even though the words are very old, can the listening be new? These selections in the Wang Po book were written down by his disciple, Pe Su, who was a Buddhist scholar, also Wang Po's disciple and the governor of the province where Wang Po taught in, if I'm correct, the 9th century and 10th century in China. These are talks given by Wang Po and interviews that the disciple recorded, in which he himself is the questioner. I have edited the things, leaving words or sentences or paragraphs out, sometimes changing a Sanskrit term into its English equivalent, sometimes leaving it. The Buddha, the word Buddha used, does not necessarily refer to the historical personage of the Buddha, but to the term means the enlightened mind or truth, absolute truth. Because Wang Po taught within the Buddhist tradition, Zen. Here's this dialogue took place about 1,000 years ago. Questioner: what is the way and how must it be followed? Wang Po: what sort of thing do you suppose the way to be that you should wish to follow it? Questioner: what instructions have the masters everywhere given for meditation practice and the study of the truth? Wang Po: Words used to attract the dull of wit are not to be relied on. Pésu. If those teachings were meant for the dull-witted, I have yet to hear what truth has been taught to those of really high capacity. Wangpo, if they are really people of high capacity, where could they find people to follow? If they seek from within themselves, they will find nothing tangible. How much less can they find a teaching worthy of their attention elsewhere? Do not look to what is called the Dharma or the teaching by preachers, for what sort of teaching could that be? Questioner, if that is so, should we not seek for anything at all? Wangpo, by conceding this, you would save yourself a lot of mental effort. Questioner, but in this way, everything would be eliminated. There cannot just be nothing. Wangpo, who called it nothing? Who was this fellow? But you wanted to seek for something. Questioner, since there is no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? Since there is no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? Wangpo, not to seek is to rest tranquil. Who told you to eliminate anything? Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? And void here does not mean vacuous space, but everything without seeing it in a fragmented way, labeling it, reacting to it, wanting it, rejecting it. That's what's called the void. Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? Questioner, if I could reach this Dharma, this teaching, or this truth, would it be like the void? Wangpo, morning and night I have explained to you that the void is both one and the manifold. I said this as a temporary expedient, but you are building concepts of it. Questioner, do you mean that we should not form concepts as human beings normally do? Wangpo, I have not prevented you, but concepts are related to the senses, and when feeling takes place and concepts are formed, wisdom is shut out. Questioner, then should we avoid any feeling in relation to the Dharma or the true teaching or the truth? Wangpo, where no feeling arises, who can say that you are right? Questioner, why do you speak as though I was mistaken in all the questions I've asked your reverence? Wangpo, you're a man who doesn't understand what is said to him. What is all this about being mistaken? Wangpo, up to now you have refuted everything which has been said. You have done nothing to point out the truth to us, or the true Dharma. Wangpo, in the truth there is no confusion, but you produce confusion by such questions. What sort of true Dharma can you go seeking for? Pésu, since the confusion arises from my questions, what will your reverence's answer be? Wangpo. Observe things as they are and don't pay attention to other people. There are some people just like mad dogs barking at everything that moves, even barking when the wind stirs among the grass and leaves. And later he says, it has never been taught that men should seek for learning or form concepts. Regarding this Zen doctrine of ours, since it was first transmitted, he says, it has never taught that men should seek for learning or form concepts. Studying the way, in quotation marks, is just a figure of speech. It is a method of arousing people's interest in the early stages of their development. In fact, the way is not something which can be studied. Study leads to the retention of concepts, and so the way is entirely misunderstood. Moreover, the way is not something specially existing. Truly, it is not located anywhere. The first step is to refrain from knowledge-based concepts. This implies that if you were to follow any empirical method to the utmost limit, on reaching that limit, you would still be unable to locate mind. Here spelled with a capital M. The way is spiritual truth and was originally without name or title. It was only because people ignorantly sought for it empirically that Buddhas appeared and taught them to eradicate this method of approach. Fearing that nobody would understand, they selected the name way. You must not allow this name to lead you into forming a mental concept of a road. What is called supreme perfect wisdom implies that there is really nothing whatever to be attained. If you're able to understand this, you will realize that the way of the Buddhas and the way of the devils are equally wide of the mark. The original, pure, glistening universe is neither square nor round, big nor small. It is without any such distinctions as long or short. It is beyond attachment and activity, ignorance and enlightenment. You must see clearly that there is really nothing at all. The great chili-cosms, numberless as grains of sand, are mere bubbles. All wisdom and all holiness are but streaks of lightning. None of them have the reality of mind. How can it? Mind is one. How can it lack a single hair of anything? When we talk of the knowledge I, in quotes, may gain, when we talk of the knowledge I may gain, the learning I may achieve, my intuitive understanding, my deliverance from rebirth, and my moral way of living, our successes make these concepts seem pleasant to us, but our failures make them appear deplorable. What is the use of all that? I advise you to remain uniformly quiescent and above all activity. Do not deceive yourselves with conceptual thinking, and do not look anywhere for the truth. For all that is needed is to refrain from allowing concepts to arise. It is obvious that mental concepts and external perceptions are equally misleading, and that the way of the Buddhas is as dangerous to you as the way of demons. So, full understanding can come to you only through an inexpressible mystery. The approach to it is called the gateway of the stillness beyond all activity. If you wish to understand, know that a sudden comprehension comes when the mind is purged of all the clutter of conceptual and discriminatory thought activity. Those who seek the truth by means of intellect and learning only get further and further away from it. Not till your thoughts cease all their branching here and there, not till you abandon all thoughts of seeking for something, will you be on the right road. The question says, at this very moment, all sorts of erroneous thoughts are constantly flowing through our minds. How can you speak of our having none? Wampo, error has no substance. It is entirely the product of your own thinking. If you see that mind is the Buddha and that mind is fundamentally without error, whenever thoughts arise, you will be fully convinced that they are responsible for errors. If you could prevent all conceptual movements of thought and still your thinking processes, naturally there would be no error left in you. Therefore it is said, when thoughts arise, then do all things arise. When thoughts vanish, then do all things vanish. Though others may talk of the way of the Buddhas as something to be reached by various pious practices and scripture study, you must have nothing to do with such ideas. A perception, sudden as blinking, that subject and object are one, will lead to a deeply mysterious, wordless understanding, and by this understanding you will awake to the truth. When you happen upon someone who has no understanding, you must claim to know nothing. He may be delighted by his discovery of some way to enlightenment, yet if you allow yourselves to be persuaded by him, you will experience no delight at all, but suffer both sorrow and disappointment. What have such thoughts as his to do with the study of Zen? Even if you do obtain from him some trifling method, it will only be a thought-constructed thing having nothing to do with truth. Truth is something never lost to you even in the moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It depends on nothing and is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self-existent and uncreated absolute. Ah, it is a jewel beyond all price. Questioner, but how can we prevent ourselves from falling into the error of making distinctions between this and that? And it's not just a distinction, is it? It's the immediate reaction. like it or I don't like it. Go away or I hope it'll stay. Wang Po says, by realizing that though you eat the whole day through, no single grain has passed your lips, and that a day's journey has not taken you a single step forward. Also, by uniformly abstaining from such notions as self and other, do not permit the events of your daily lives to bind you, but never withdraw yourselves from them. Only by acting thus can you earn the title of a liberated one. Usually I don't read that. Avoid the error of thinking in terms of past, present, and future. The past has gone, the present is a fleeting moment, and the future has not yet come. When you practice meditation, sit in the proper position, which includes even a sofa. Stay perfectly tranquil and do not permit the least movement of your minds to disturb you. He doesn't say prevent them from arising, the thoughts or the movements of the mind. He says, let not the least movement of your minds disturb you. Or, if disturbance has already set in, because that's faster than thought, it seems, then does the disturbance need to disturb? This alone is what is called liberation. Be diligent, be diligent. These are two interviewers from East-West Journal, we'll also say questioner, and K for Krishnamurti. Questioner. Even though one is still suffering, is it possible to help others who are suffering? K. Why not? Though I may be suffering and you may be suffering, why not? That's one part of it. The other part is suffering to be ended through a long process of time? To be completely free, does it take time? Does it take evolution? Is it a matter of progressive achievement? Is there such a thing as psychological evolution at all? We have evolved through millennia, and we think we have reached a certain stage psychologically and also physiologically. We have created this world, this society, with all its monstrosity and ugliness, the destruction of the environment, killing each other, perpetual wars for the last 6,000 or 7,000 years. And during this long period of time, we haven't changed. We haven't stopped wars. So, will further evolution of 40 or 50,000 years change us? When the 40,000 years before haven't? Questioners. But now that we have massive worldwide communications, unique in history, do you think that a transformation of consciousness will emerge? Okay. Through communication? Through communications? Do you really think so? Questioners. I mean specifically using the media as a tool to raise consciousness. For instance, this film Gandhi that has just won the Academy Award is basically about peace and about Gandhi's main message of non-violence. Okay, that's rubbish. Unless you go to the root of the matter, you're merely scratching the surface. Questioners, but perhaps people could be inspired by scratching the surface to then try to go to the root. Okay. Inspiration only lasts for a very short while. Very few people ever affect the psyche. Very few. Gandhi is totally forgotten in India. Questioner. There was an article that said that the Indians were very impressed by the movie, but were somewhat bemused by the non-violent aspect of it. Okay, that's right. He was a very violent man. They're trying to make a saint out of him, and the only man who was helping India to be free, which isn't true. There were hundreds. Annie Besant was one. She worked for 40 years helping the country to be free. She's never mentioned. It's also lopsided. So what is the question? Questioner. The question is, if only a few people throughout history, and Kay interrupts, can they affect the consciousness of man? Questioner. Because, as you say, there are many terrible wars, many terrible injustices throughout the world now. How can we change them? Okay, that is a good question. Do you really want us to discuss all this? Questioner, if you have time. Okay, I have time. But one has to be very serious to go into all this. Questioners, that's our personal work, as well as our professional concern, to influence society in any way we can. Okay, I don't believe in influence. Questioners, what is your motivation then? Okay, nothing. Questioners, but you've been carrying on all these years. Okay, it's a long story. Suppose that you're enlightened and you're asking, how will you affect the rest of humanity? Has any person, however illumined, affected mankind? It's very doubtful. I'm not being pessimistic, I'm just looking at facts. When you look at facts, you can't be optimistic or pessimistic, right? Put the question the other way. Is human consciousness all one or separate? Do you understand? Is it individual consciousness or consciousness of the entire humanity? My consciousness or X's consciousness, what is that? Or what is the content of that consciousness? Belief, faith, ideologies, conclusions, concepts, fear, suffering, loneliness, anxiety, and constant struggle from morning to night till he dies, right? That's a fact. But the rest of humanity's consciousness, whether they live in a small village or in one of these tall buildings, is similar to everybody else's. We all share the same consciousness. It can never be individual. The brain is not my brain. It has evolved through several millennia, but we have said, this is my particular brain, my particular consciousness, my country, my God, and so on. So if one person stepped out of this way of thinking, has it any value to the others? To the rest of mankind? Questioner. It appears the Buddha did. He left a technique to practice awareness, and his influence has been very great. He couldn't have left a technique. After his death, his disciples probably gathered together and put up a scheme. Buddha couldn't possibly have said, "Seek refuge in me." The systems came after he died. We think because he had attained some illumination, had suffered and gone through starvation, that we must also go through that in order to achieve what he achieved. And he might say, well, that's all childish stuff. It has nothing to do with enlightenment. Can one person who is illumined, to put it in modern terms, free from all conditioning, affect the consciousness of all the rest of mankind? What do you think, impersonally, objectively, as you look at the world? 2,000 years of Christian propaganda, Jesus is the Savior, and the churches have burned people, tortured people, had hundreds of years of war in Europe. Christians have been one of the greatest killers in the world. I'm not against nor for. I'm just pointing out that this is the result of 2,000 years of, quote, peace on earth, unquote. It has no meaning whether Jesus existed or not. So has all this propaganda, this programming of the brain after 2,000 years of repetition of the Mass day after day affected man at all? Christ said, don't hate your enemy, love your enemy. And everything we do is contrary to that. We don't care. So what will affect man? What will change man who has been programmed, literally programmed like a computer, to worship Jesus, to worship the Buddha, to worship other gods? Can the mind free itself from all programs? Is it possible to be totally free of taking in information, what the newspapers say, what the magazines say, what the priests, psychologists, and professors say? Education, propaganda on the television, the evangelists in America, that peculiar breed, are all telling me what to think and increasingly what to do. If I have a little quarrel with my wife, I go to the specialists, the psychologists, psychotherapists. Dr. Spock or some professor tells me how to raise my children. I'm becoming a slave to these specialists. My mind is conditioned and I'm limited. Conditioning implies limitation. I'm in battle with everybody else for the rest of my days. And there's the future of man. Questioner, then what's the point of it all? Okay, nothing. It has no meaning. What is the point of the Pope going to Poland or all over South America? It's a vast entertainment. Sustaining the faith, he says you must sustain faith, which means believe in Christ, which means do what we tell you, is also absurd. So what will you do with the world pressing you all the time? They won't let you alone. I say, sorry, I won't accept any of it. Whether it's the Buddha, Christ, the Pope, Mr. Reagan telling me what to do. Sorry, I won't. This means we have to be extraordinarily capable of standing alone. And nobody wants to do that. Questioner. Do you think there is a truth? Okay, yes. But there's not my truth, your truth. And it has no path. There's no Christian path, Hindu path, Buddhist path, your path, my path. One must be free of all paths to find it. The Hindus have been very clever at this. They say there is the path of knowledge, the path of action, and the path through devotion. This suits everybody. Okay. So you say, to stand alone we find out truth? Okay, no. The word alone means all one. But people say, I can't do it alone, so please help me to put my house in order. And invent the guru, or a particular guru, or the whole idea of gurus. The world of so-called religion, whether it is the religion of Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, Catholics, the whole structure of religious ceremonies is put together by thought, is it not? The Mass was invented by man. They may say it came directly from heaven, but that seems rather absurd. It's been invented by man. The ancient Egyptians had their ceremonies to shape man. It isn't something new, the worship of symbols and figures. The guru, the mantra, various forms of yoga, which have been brought over to this unfortunate country, are all authorities leading you to meditate and all. We have done it. We have tried Jesus. We have tried every form of person and idea, theory and system. They have not worked. So it's up to me to put my house in order. I cannot depend on anyone else. If you reject the church, the whole religious structure of the world, any kind of spiritual authority, you are free of it. Questioners, haven't these people and systems been inspiration to some? Okay, what is inspiration? To do something better? You answer it yourself. Questioner, isn't it to add to the potential of each human being? Okay, yes, but if I'm asleep, questioner, then it is to wake you up. Kay says, yes, and all the time I want entertainment to keep me awake. Man wants to be entertained. He wants to escape from himself at any price. This is a fact. The church has done it, and now sports, football, cricket, and so on. It's a vast entertainment. I'm bored, I'm harassed, I'm weary, so I come to you and say, inspire me. For the moment, and for the moment you stimulate me, you act as a drug for the moment, so I depend on you. Questioner, you speak of freedom from something, from religion, from politics. Okay. Freedom is in itself, without any motive, not from or for, just freedom. For instance, I am not a Hindu. I'm free of it. But that's not freedom. I am free from a particular form of prison, but we create other prisons as we go along. The point is, suppose you have understood and have rejected, negated, and negated all this, and you want to help me. There is something unethical, if I may use the word, in trying to help me, right? Do you understand? Question, I don't understand why. Okay, you're trying to help me. That's your path. Why do I want to be helped? Questioner, because you might be suffering. Okay, suppose I've lost my son, my wife has left me, I can't get the job I want. How are you going to help me? Why do I seek help? Why do I have this craving to go to somebody to ask help? Questioner, sometimes it's helpful to meet someone who's gone through experiences of suffering. They are an example. Okay, we're doing that now. And how far will you go with it? Questioner says, perhaps not the whole way, but it can be a comfort. Okay, then what's the point of it? You have gone so far and stopped. What's the point? So then I become an example, and that's the worst thing. There have been many examples of all kinds. Why do you want help? To follow somebody, look up to somebody. Why? When there's some kind of disease in me, I go to the doctor. If I don't know the direction, I seek help from a police officer. The postman is helping when he brings a letter. In the physiological world, help is necessary. Otherwise, we couldn't exist, right? But I'm asking myself, psychologically, inwardly, will anybody help me? Man has suffered through time beyond measure, for millennia. What will help him to end that suffering? He goes on killing, goes on murdering. He has ambitions in everything, which is another form of killing. And what will stop him? Not Gandhi. His non-violence is really a form of violence. Non-violence is an idea, right? Why don't we deal with the fact which is violence? Why do you put that picture of non-violence in front of me? I say, deal with what is here. I've had discussions with Gandhi's disciples, with his followers, endlessly about this matter. I said to them often, we've had this war between India and Pakistan, and you talked about non-violence. Were any of you conscientious objectors? Did any of you go to prison for peace? Not one of them. It meant absolutely nothing. So what's the point of non-violence? It's a jargon, an escape. I know if I'm violent, how to deal with this. But you're all the time dangling in front of me this non-violence, which is not real. Questioner, do you think we will just keep going on like this? Warring among ourselves for all of history? Okay, you're asking the same question in different words. What is the future of man? Unless we radically change, the future is what we are now. It's a serious fact. And nobody wants to change radically. You change a little bit here, a little there. If you want peace, you live peacefully. But nobody wants to live peacefully. Neither the Pope, nor the Prime Minister, nor anybody. So they're keeping up the wars. I've talked to a great many politicians in my life, a great many spiritual leaders, to gurus who come to see me. I don't know why. They never talk about ending conflict, which means finding out the cause of conflict. Never. Let's say nationalism is one of the causes. They never talked about it. If the Pope said tonight that the Church will excommunicate anybody who joins the army to do organized killing, then tomorrow he would not exist. They would throw him out. I'm not cynical. I'm just looking at facts. So what will change man? Apparently nothing from outside. No church, no threats, no wars, nothing from outside. Change implies a great deal of inquiry, a great deal of search. Someone hasn't the time, so he says, tell me all about it quickly. But one must give one's whole life to this, not just play around with it. The monks think they have given their life, but they have given their life to an idea, to a symbol, to somebody called Christ. The Hindus have their sannyasins, the Buddhists their bhikkhus. It's the same phenomenon. Questioner. It appears that we are at a unique time in history. Okay. Yes, but the crisis is not in the world out there. Rather, it is inside us, in our consciousness, which means that man has to change. Questioner. Has your teaching and your writing made a change? Okay. With some, perhaps. I'm not looking to see if somebody changed or not. It's like this. You give food to me, and if I'm hungry, I'll take it. And if I'm not, I look at it, smell it, say, it's very nice, and then wander off. Very few people are hungry for this kind of stuff. Buddha is supposed to have talked for 40 years, and there were only 2 disciples who understood, Moggallana and Sariputra, and they died before he did. There's the whole tragedy of existence. Questioner. Do you feel that your teaching has made a deep impression? Okay. Some have given up their jobs, have said, we'll come to your schools. They're doing it because they're schools, not monasteries, not ashrams, but schools, where you get a degree, of course. Questioner. So you feel that education is a place to really affect a change? Okay. If teachers were concerned, if education all over the world was concerned to bring about a new generation, they could do it. But they're not concerned. They want to stuff the children with mathematics, biology, chemistry to make them become good engineers. Society wants good engineers. There's money in it. Educators have enormous responsibility because they hold the future more than the parents. Educators must be concerned with a holistic view of life. I've talked about it so much. I've got a school in California, 1 in England and 5 in India, and I've spent a great deal of time in all of them. But the parents want their children to be like themselves, have a good job, get married, settle down. Society around them wants that. So it's a tremendous battle with the parents, with the teachers, with the society. It's a sick world. Questioner. It seems as though there's as much physical sickness, like cancer, as there is mental sickness. Okay, they're related to each other. Questioner. When you meet someone who is sick physically, what is your approach? Do you heal? Okay, yes, but please, I want to make this quite clear. Healing is not my profession, not my work. Let me rather say, if someone cannot be cured, he's going to die. And death apparently is a horror to everybody. Whether diseased or healthy, death is something to be abominated. But death and life go together. You can't say, I'll keep death out there and life here. What matters is how you live before death, not after. Living is more important than dying. Living is, it's too complex. Questioner. Do you believe in rebirth? Okay, first of all, I don't believe in anything. Secondly, what is it that is going to be reborn? Say I've been suffering for 10 years and I die. Now, will I in my next life go on from where I left off? Is there individuality at all? Is there the ego, my ego, your ego, a spiritual essence, the Atman, the highest principle? Questioner. Perhaps it's just a process. Okay, what is that? It's a process of thought. There's nothing sacred about thought, nor about the things that thought has created in the churches of the world. They worship it, but it's not sacred. There is something absolutely sacred, but you can't pick it up casually. You can't just believe. Do you understand? Men have searched for this in different ways and never found it. They have given their lives to it. It can't be found in an afternoon conversation or reading a book or going to some fanciful meditation. If you don't find it, what's the point of all this? One has to work on this for years to find out. It isn't just a game that you play. But people haven't the time, so they worship the one who has something. Or they kill him. Both are the same. Whether they worship or kill, both are exactly the same. Questioner. Isn't there some possibility of transmission between individuals? Okay. Now you are with somebody who is a little peaceful and who doesn't want a thing from you, and you feel quiet. But you have what? You've taken a drug for the time being, and the moment you leave here, it will all go. It's so obvious. Questioners. But if we are climbing some mountain, and we've got to see you because it seems that you are a few steps ahead. Okay, I don't believe in climbing. There's no climbing. No, I am this and I have to become that. There's only this. Change this, that's all. Questioner. Why do you teach? Okay. Why does a flower bloom? Instead of the 3 selections I picked, we'll just read one short one. From Krishnamurti's notebook, this written in India in the 60s. Across the river, smoke was going up in a straight column. It was a simple movement bursting into the sky. There wasn't a breath of air. There wasn't a ripple on the river, and every leaf was still. The parrots were the only noisy movement as they flashed by. Even the little fisherman's boat did not disturb the water. Everything seemed to have frozen in stillness, except the smoke. even though it was going so straight up in the sky, there was a certain gaiety in it and freedom of total action. And beyond the village and the smoke was the glowing sky of the evening. It had been a cool day, and the sky had been open, and there was the light of 1,000 winters. It was short, penetrating, and expansive. It went with you everywhere. It wouldn't leave you. Like perfume, it was in the most unexpected places. It seemed to have entered into the most secret corners of one's being. It was a light that left no shadow, and every shadow lost its depth. Because of it, all substance lost its density. It was as though you looked through everything, through the trees on the other side of the wall, through your own self. Yourself was as opaque as the sky and as open. It was intense, and to be with it was to be passionate. Not the passion of feeling or desire, but a passion that would never wither or die. It was a strange light. It exposed everything and made vulnerable. And what had no protection was love. You couldn't be what you were burnt out, without leaving any ashes. And unexpectedly, there was not a thing but that light. We will end here for today.